this is the whole industry is going to be thrown up and down.
But these people are spending money like it's going out of style.
Yeah.
Because it is going out of style.
That's right.
Elena, did the other meeting get canceled?
Yes, it did.
What happened?
So, well, there was a big discussion on religion, and then it shut down.
It was a mess.
Alrighty. Well, we did say we would start again at 2:45, so I'm kind of committed to that.
Oh, that's right. In case we've lost folks.
We have.
All right.
What did they have a technical problem?
Oh my God.
Yep.
They always have a technical problem, David. Always. The best was losing control over Banner when was that? Was that during midterm grades or
Yeah.
Registration.
the registration? Yeah, we were trying to register students, and the registration system collapsed.
Yes, you have one banner instance for all of the community colleges.
Right.
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 Go
Right.
bad in one place, it can affect the whole network.
Yeah, because that was the very first thing consolidated. And it's worked beautifully.
We had a huge fight back when Banner was originally being brought in over whether it would all be centralized. This was the time of the 4-campus CSU system. And the system office at that time, that was Bill Sievers, who was chancellor, wanted all data to be held at the system office, including registration for your classes and everything else. And there was a huge fight to have 4 separate instances where all of the CIOs got fired as a result. The CIO at the system office got fired, the CIO at Central got fired, and eventually we did end up with 4 separate instances. That was an early effort at consolidation. The idea then was to consolidate the information technology services at the 4 CSUs. It was a project called SITES, SITES, an acronym for who knows what, security and information technology or something of the sort. Vista, the precursor to Blackboard, was part of that project, and they were supposed to have, tiger teams where IT staff at the campuses would be 2/3 of their time working for the system office, 1/3 of the time working for the campus. It all finally collapsed when Bill Sievers retired as chancellor.
What do you think about Zoom?
I like it better than WebEx.
We've asked our CIO to ask the system office to get a Zoom instead of WebEx or Next, and
Yeah.
he said he's not going to because it's not secure enough.
Well, the Zoom webinar this morning with Netchi was terrible. Terrible. The pictures kept freezing. Half the time you couldn't hear the questions because it would cut out. It was really, really bad. And I thought I had seen the worst until I saw the beginning of this meeting.
Well, I was thinking of doing this meeting next time in Zoom.
It was bad. It was really bad.
But I
Well,
used it on.
If you enjoy seeing Laura Gambino's face freeze over and over again, then it was good.
People were involved in your Zoom meeting.
There were quite a few, because NEAN is a regional assessment network, so there were a lot of people.
Well, I had hoped that Zoom would be better than WebEx because this meeting has been okay, but not great. I'm going to get.
It's improved. It got off to a rough start, David, but it's been much better ever since.
I know that's the good part of it. Like I had an interview on Wednesday. The interviewer was in Dublin, Ireland, and the interviewee was in Tucson, Arizona. And we did it across 8 time zones. And I recorded it here in Connecticut. It worked out fine.
Yeah. Yeah, you told us that the interviewee was Noam Chomsky, right?
Yes.
So is he up for a position at Central?
I believe that we're suggesting him. We suggested him for interim president of the community colleges. I don't think that got accepted.
Is Noam
Oh,
Chomsky? Is
we're
Noam
having the
Chomsky
Bertrand
in
Russell
Dublin?
Society meeting, which was supposed to be at Central in June. We're doing it online, and I'm not sure whether WebEx or Zoom will be but he is our honoree. He's a big fan of Bertrand Russell, has a portrait of Bertrand Russell in his office. He gave the first Russell lectures in 1972, and is kind of the same sort of individual, a high-powered academic working in logic or in his case linguistics, but also a public intellectual.
Yep.
So I'll make that available to you folks if you're interested. And I'm just
I'd
having
love to see him.
I'm about to process it. It was the questions were mainly about his interactions with Russell's writings and so forth. Not anything contemporary, but he'd been interviewed all day long about contemporary things. So I think he was just as happy to respond.
Is Noam Chomsky in Dublin right now?
No, the person who interviewed him is in Dublin. Chomsky has moved to Tucson, Arizona,
Okay.
where he's associated now with the University of Arizona. He's emeritus at MIT. He's 91. But look, he seemed in good form. He was ready to fight some more. So here I did the first ballot by one of the things about WebEx, which is good, is that you can easily do a poll. They call it a poll. And that works fairly well. I have to see whether that can be done in Zoom. That might be the difference. WebEx is, yes, it's supported by the system office, as is Microsoft Teams. The free version of Zoom limits you to 40 minutes. So that was a problem, and I upgraded to the $15.99 per month thing, which I may or may not continue. But it was worth it in order to get that interview. As it turned out, Chomsky was being interviewed by so many people, he showed up 40 minutes late, so we wouldn't have been able to do it otherwise. Google now also is coming out with a online collaboration tool. So everybody wants to get into the game. It's a very lucrative, potentially a very lucrative game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I assume that. Go ahead. I assume lots of meetings are going to be like this online in the future.
Yeah, I was going to say because of the COVID pandemic.
Yes, but even afterwards, I think the so-called new normal is going to be much more hybrid than what we've had before. I mean, I'm not sure that people want to go totally online, although apparently people at Twitter now have that option to work permanently online forever. But at the university, the arguments which were made earlier indicate that we want some form of direct contact with the students and also with each other.
Yeah, I hate teaching online, but I have to say, I like these online meetings a lot better than I like driving to Hartford Friday.
Oh,
Yeah.
see, there you go. I agree with you.
I think what this has forced people to do is find out what works and what doesn't. And, I've hated it too, but have I managed? Yeah. I can I teach from home? I can. I don't like it, but I can do it if I need to. I don't think it's good for our students, especially the weaker ones, but it can be done.
Well, I always said the two things that should not be done online were classes with students who had just graduated from high school. I had no other experience, and a senior seminar. And I ended up doing our senior seminar online.
Yeah.
And it's not as good. I mean, clearly, the kind of interaction that you have with people in a small group, and the discussion takes a new track, and then you say, well, let's go and have a coffee, and let's rethink this. Let's take a look at a book or something else. You can't do that online as easily.
Yeah.
It does make for a more strained atmosphere, and it's less. I've done online courses over the summer for years. I have no problem with that, but then I never see the students. They don't really form a relationship with me. There's no advising. There's certainly no mentoring. They come, they go. I come, I went, and And at the end, it is basically we enacted a contract. They said they would take the course. I said I would give it.
Yeah, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I have to say though, this is Colleen. I'm wondering about the house. Um, I I teach online every semester, and every semester it's struggling for me because I feel so disconnected from the students. And then at the end of the semester, when students either reflect or send you notes, you realize that like, it's less rewarding for me for sure, but there's certain students who thrive online. You know, at least that feels better.
Yeah, I've had that experience. Before this semester, I taught online 9 years. I taught a section of U.S. History 2, and those were some of my best students, but almost always they were non-traditional. They were older, some had degrees. They had a skill set that allowed them to flourish there and do really good work. I agree with David. The traditional students right out of high school, that's a really tough environment to put most of them in.
But as soon as we have our virtual glasses from Apple coming out in 2022, Helena won't just have to wander around in the house. She'll be still in contact with us and seeing the screen. It's going to happen.
I'll say this. I do not want to go back to teaching in the classroom next semester. I just don't feel like we know enough to know that we'll be safe. But simultaneously, my son is thinking about the prospect of his next semester being fully online. And he doesn't want to bother to enroll if he's online. And like, I'm feeling both things very strongly at the same time, you know?
It says, what did people feel like in 1939 in September in Great Britain?
Yeah.
That was far worse because they were going to have bombs on their head. We at least don't have that, but we just have microbes somewhere in the atmosphere. I think that this is going to be a strange year for everybody. We're going to have to sort of stumble through it. I hope not to be tripped up.
My daughter is finishing up her third year in a 6-year physical therapy program. And this happens to be the summer that they have to take 12 credits over the summer. And it's all online, 12 credits of online summer classes. It's going to be brutal.
I assume she's doing clinical, Ron, or at least in some clinical component.
Not this summer. It's kind of introductory, to physical therapy type courses, and it's a mix. It's gen ed. They start graduate courses, but in order for them to get undergraduate prices on tuition, they mix the grad courses with the undergraduate courses for the next year, I think.
Because I'm really worried about that. People doing lab sciences, things that require hands-on.
Right. Well, she, for her, she does have to do some hands-on things, which is why she and her friends rented a house up in Springfield, where she goes to Springfield College, and they're not going to move in because her friends aren't going to move in. And I said, well, you can go up there by yourself. And she said, no, because I need people to manipulate, for this course that she's taking. Right. So I guess her family, including me, are going to be subject to all kinds of humiliating manipulations.
Well, that could be good or bad, depending how good she is, how much she's learned.
Yeah, we'll see.
When she gets to the end, that'll be nice.
Yeah.
So let me ask you guys something. Have you actually seen the org charts that they were going to show today?
No.
Okay, well, I've got them, 15 pages of them.
Wow.
Who wants to see them? Who wants to see them?
Yes, send them along.
See them.
Why don't you show your screen?
Yeah.
15 pages.
5 minutes.
I guess we got time.
Yeah, we have another 8 minutes.
Yeah.
You have to pass it to me. I can't show my screen unless you pass it to me.
Okay. How do I do that?
That little ball right next to your name, just drag it down to mine, wherever that is.
Ball.
This little blue, green, white thing.
Oh, yes, okay.
Actually, I might be able to do it.
Okay, I just, oh, no, it bounced back.
Let me see. I might be able to do it. Hold on.
I think you can. You want to change the presenter to Lois Emmy?
You want to become the presenter?
Okay, I sent it to you.
All right. Okay. Let me get it up first. Hello, where are you?
So you have to go down now to your those little buttons.
Yeah, I know. I just wanted to get it up before I go to share.
Okay.
Come on, go away. All right. So where am I? Wait,
So I
I'm
made
not sure. I
fresh
think
coffee for the second half of this meeting, and I actually felt bad for a second that I didn't offer any of you any.
Oh, good grief.
uh-oh, I think I just,
Yeah, we can see something here.
can you see that?
Yeah, but the print is very small, so it's hard to make it out. You'd have to
Yeah,
read
that's
it to
the
us.
problem. It is. Yeah.
But you know, if you go very close to the screen, that's better.
Let me see if I can.
Yeah,
Yeah,
leave
let's
that. That is readable if you get close to the screen.
So this is the first one.
You emailed this also, though?
Yes, I certainly. So you got to look at this thing down at the bottom left where it says the different colors, the system office positions, and then the blue are college office positions, so they're not located on the campus. The only campus ones are these purple ones.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So there's no deans.
No, well, wait, we keep going. It's 15 pages of this stuff.
Holy crap.
Sometimes faculty are on the campus.
Wow. How about that?
Faculty are on the campus.
Yeah, there's going to be no reason
Correct.
to have a dean. Why would you have a dean, right? On a campus. A campus is just a building.
Yeah, see, the deans are at the system level.
Right. Can you imagine how this is going to work?
It's not. There'll be no leadership at all. Well, I
They
guess that's good for faculty because whenever there's no leadership, the faculty fill the gap.
Yeah. So there are opportunities here.
I mean, faculty senate's going to be, although they'll probably abolish our faculty senates and just move a big one up to Hartford.
Yeah, so there's not even associate deans are going to be on the campuses.
No, nobody. Do they have chairs?
Ain't going to be,
Full-time
no,
faculty.
they're going to be associate, they've gotten rid of the chair thing again. Remember, they went back to that from the substantive change they submitted.
Yeah. I figured they would. There's no reason to keep chairs. They want to completely disembowel us.
Oh, wait, they've got associate deans. No, associate deans are in Hartford.
Yeah, the associate deans are in Hartford.
Yeah.
Wow.
I imagine they're going to be hiring all the adjunct faculty too? For all the
Who's going to be
campuses?
hiring anybody? There's not going to be anybody. Well, I don't even know what the CEOs are going to be doing on the campus since there's not going to be anybody reporting to them except faculty.
Well, this is the Ivy Tech model because I worked at Ivy Tech when I was at Purdue for my PhD, and there was a summer. They needed an adjuncts, and I needed money, and so I showed up, and I thought I was going to meet with a department chair or something. No, it was just another adjunct who basically helped me fill out the W-2, gave me a syllabus, gave me the assignments, and said go to it.
Well, but when I heard when Tom Coley saw this, who is retired from Ivy Tech, and he's our regional president. When he saw these organization charts, he said, he looked at it, he said, we weren't this top heavy at Ivy Tech.
Yeah, but what I mean is that there was nobody at the local level, nobody who you could talk to, or who you could even identify if you were a new faculty member. If you were, there was nobody to turn to. There was no supervision. I was never evaluated. It was incredible.
We're going to start again in a couple of minutes.
Look what they've got. They've got a director of course delivery, director of campus schedules, director of classroom and digital facilities and technology. None of these are campus positions.
Faculty workload, is it?
Faculty workload.
Wow.
Can you send us copies of this, just forwarded by email, Lois?
Yes, sure.
Yeah.
This is going to make redundant some of the professional staff positions too. You can see that coming.
Yeah.
Why would you keep those people?
Wow.
What is a director of
Hello? Hi, this is Barbara, just calling in.
Good. Okay, we're going to start again in 1 more minute. Lois has on the screen what should have been the content of the other WebEx, which apparently got canceled. For technical problems? Something.
I think it was divine
To say
intervention.
the least. To say the least, technical problems.
Did you send it out also by email, Lois?
I haven't yet. I will.
Thanks.
Well, it brings us to the next point on our agenda, which was BOR nomination of interim president and the other appointments which have just been made. Helena and I attended the Board of Regents meeting as ex officio non-voting folk. Was anybody else at the meeting as listening in?
I was listening in.
Okay. So, as you know, and we received an email this morning this afternoon, actually it was yesterday at 1:10. So they put this out quite quickly after the meeting. The meeting ended at almost 1 o'clock. And that was the nominations of the 5 CEOs, but also David Levinson as the interim appointment as president of the newly named community college. I marked down a couple of things here. His salary would be $288,354. The CEOs were at $155,250. I don't know how that compares to previous presidents, whether they earn more or less. I'm going to guess the CEOs are getting less, and the president of the one big college is getting more. They also named, you have that in the email too from yesterday from the Board of Regents, Michael Rook as the interim provost, Kerry Kelly, who is moving over from the Office of Policy and Management as interim CFO, Tanya Miller, the interim CEO at Manchester Community College, becoming the interim associate vice president for teaching and learning, Francine Rosselli Navarra, interim associate vice president, programs and curriculum, and Mike Stefanowitz will become interim associate vice president of higher education transition. So that gives a cabinet, as it were, of at least 5 people for Levinson, and his contract is good for 2 years, from May 15th, 2020 to May 14th, 2022. So that was the information that we got, but you now all have as well through that email. So this becomes, and the other point, which now, Kalina, you can correct me, or Lois, I was surprised by one thing that Mark Ojakian said, which was that the CEOs would report to the regional presidents, who would report directly to him, and not to the interim one big community college president. Is that correct?
That is also
I
what
didn't. Go ahead, Kalina.
Okay, I'll go
Sorry?
ahead. That's also what I think I heard, but it made no sense to me. So hopefully we can check the recording.
Yeah, I did record it, and they'll put it up, so we'll check that, which would be even more strange. But that would then put all these people simply manufacturing supporting documents for the NETCHI accreditation. But clearly, you have now this additional layer of bureaucracy, and we now know the names and the positions. At least one of the cabinet people is coming from outside the CSU system, so it can't be that they're simply keeping the salary that they had at the position that they were before and doing a double position, and that's Kerry Kelly. And I don't know, Mike Stefanowitz, was he a faculty member?
No, he worked in student services.
Student services, okay. So,
This is Jen Long. So just to clarify, are these all white men?
Kerry
Seems like
Kelly,
the
no,
diversity
I think
piece
it's
is not being
Tanya
listened
Milner,
to.
Francine, there should be 3 women and 3 men, including
There are 3 women. Okay.
Stefanowitz. I mean, just by names.
I know we struggle with diversity.
So let me take back control here. Lois, I don't know what's happening to your screen, but it's
Yeah, I know. You need to drag this up. I've been trying to bring it to you and I can't, so.
okay. Let me.
It looks very interesting.
I know.
This is sort of like art.
kind of
It's
a little psychedelic.
It's infinite regress.
Yes.
Yes.
You have mirrors on opposite sides of the wall.
Yeah, it's just like a barbershop.
Right. Right.
Oh, the question is, how do I undo what I just did? Hang on a second, Lois.
You want to take that ball by my name and drag it up to yours.
Right. Unfortunately, it doesn't drag.
Really?
Well, it drags, but I can't get to my name. I have to do something here.
I'm dragging it up to your name, but then it bounces back to mine.
Okay. Let me see what I can do here. Okay. You are now the presenter. All right.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay. So let me I'm the presenter, but I'm not, you don't see anything. So let's reconvene the meeting, and I will simply go back to the agenda. So we had the interim president, we've done item 4. We can try and find out how much money this involves, but certainly it must be $500,000 to $1 million a year, and we don't know what support staff they would have in addition. Let's go on to item 5, which is AR time issues at the community colleges. Is there anybody who wanted to discuss on that?
I was happy to see Dennis and Maureen put out guidance on that issue that I think is really useful, and I hope faculty take their advice and apply for distance learning or remote learning time to be used towards their AR. We'll see what happens, but I think we at least need to request that time for this semester and also for the fall and maybe for the spring too, for all.
Okay. Any other discussion on that point? Let's move on to point 6 then. Financial impact of the pandemic on colleges and universities. There was a report from the Finance and Infrastructure Committee, that's Rich Balducci, to the board yesterday. Nobody had any comments on it. I mean, presumably they were exhausted from a 3.5-hour meeting, including a 1-hour break. basically for the nominations to the CEOs and the interim president and so forth. I'm told there were 300 people online for that meeting. So it must be that many of the family and friends of the people who were being nominated to CEO and interim president and other positions were online. So it was kind of a ceremonial meeting.
Mhm.
When it came to like a real issue, which is the financial effects of the pandemic on the universities and on the community colleges, nobody had anything to say. It was at the end of the meeting. In fact, I was going to say something. By the time I got to my mouse to unblock my microphone, Matt Fleury had moved on to the last item on the agenda, which was nothing, and the meeting was adjourned.
Mm.
So, as I mentioned earlier, the report from Ben Barnes was pretty clear, and it's in the agenda. There's a reference to it in the agenda for this meeting, but it was in the agenda for the Board of Regents meeting, and the impact has been substantially much greater on the 4 universities because of the closing of the dormitories. Um, about $27 million. Now, there is money coming back to higher education through the CARES Act, that's that federal aid package, but it will only, half of it has to go directly to students for compensation for having to have gone online in midterm, and half can come back to the universities for their own use. So only about half of that cost will be taken up in CARES. For the community colleges, it was only about $1.5 million all told for all 12 of them because of the absence of dormitories, basically. Um, the other point was that that CARES, part of the CARES Act that goes towards students, there is a guidance, which apparently has the impact of a directive from the Department of Education, the federal one, saying that only students who had applied for federal aid using the FAFSA form, the FAFSA form, the federal aid form, are eligible for it. Right? And obviously that was intended to exclude non-documented students, dreamers, but it also impacts even students who are eligible but for one reason or another did not apply, or whose application was turned down because it wasn't correctly formulated. So on average, it's about 1/3 of the students who will not get any financial aid. The number given was $300 to $400, or financial compensation, $300 to $400 in the community colleges, and an amount probably equivalent, possibly a bit more, depending on the number of credits at the universities. Mark Wajakian had written a letter to the Department of Education protesting the limitation to FAFSA. And I think that was the right thing to do. I don't know that that's going to have a big influence on them. The politics behind this is pretty clear. So that was we're going to have to come back to that because, of course, for all the reasons we're discussing now, students who are going to take a 6 months off, students who are not going to be able to register because they didn't work during the summer and don't have any money, closure of dorms, or at least at best opening them at half. The losses, especially to the universities, but also to the community colleges, are going to be substantial. And so I think that's an issue that we need to come back to. The only hope that there could be would be additional compensation from the governor, and that is the rainy day fund. And whether that rainy day fund, he had, I think, quite correctly refused to use it for infrastructure and during his failed effort to get tolls on the major highways. But obviously, it's a pretty rainy day these days, and so hopefully that money would become available. So that's something we need to continue to follow.
Yeah.
And we don't know what
And
enrollments are going to be like. And of course, as we said earlier, we don't know what we're going to be doing. Are there any further points on that?
I just wanted to jump in about the non-FAFSA students because I was really surprised at how many there were. So the average is 1/3, but at all of the community colleges and at Central, it's over 40%. It's like about 45% of our students are non-FAFSA. And then at Eastern, Southern, and Western, it's in the 20s, like 20 something percent.
Yeah, the
But
number
it's
for
a
Central was
significant
corrected.
portion of our students. Pardon?
The number for Central was corrected down
Oh,
to
it
32%.
was.
Yes.
Okay, that made more sense. I did not understand why it was so high. Okay.
But you're right, it is quite high. That's a third of the
Yeah,
students, and it could be slightly higher in some places.
yeah. At the community colleges, it's closer to 50%.
Right, because they did not apply for
Um,
federal aid.
which agenda item are we on under? Because I'm trying to take notes and I got confused. Are we on?
We're at item number 6, financial
Okay, that's
impact
what
of the
I thought.
pandemic.
Thank you.
And as I say, it's in the report of the BOR meeting of May 14th, if you go to page 105. And it's actually a very clearly written report. The fact that nobody was interested in discussing it at the Board of Regents was, I think, pretty unfortunate.
Mm.
Okay. Number 7 is general education resolution by the board at its May 14th meeting. Kalina intervened and made some very good points, which of course fell upon deaf ears. Do you want to just say what point that you made?
Sure. So I'll say this is following an ASA meeting where it was considered first, where I think I went, it was a good portion of it was my questions, but the total conversation about the Gen Ed lasted a good 50 minutes with Mike Stefanowitz and Ken Klutznick. So at the meeting yesterday, I just kind of summed up some of the information I got from that discussion. And my advice was simply that because the Gen Ed was still absent the revised outcomes, so the actual definitions of the words on the page were going to change. The diversity requirement had been left in. Oh, I should back up and tell you the process of how this thing came to be. I apologize. Let me tell you that first. Okay. So as you know, the members of the Gen Ed committee or Gen Ed work group of the SFASACC, many of them have resigned or been recalled. So at the time that the Gen Ed went out to all of the colleges, there were 12 elected members from the different colleges. By the time the feedback and the resolutions to not vote or the votes and the feedback came back to the group had been reduced by 6 bodies in terms of people who had been recalled and resigned, or 9 representatives, because there were 3 other people who decided to stay on even though they were recalled. So they were no longer representing their colleges, but they were still serving. So either way, with all the feedback that came back, the Gen Ed group felt that they were not comfortable modifying the proposal based on the feedback because they were no longer representative enough. They still sent it on to the SFASACC based on 2 votes. So Quinnebog and Middlesex actually voted on the content of the proposal and endorsed it. Norwalk did not vote, right? Wrote a resolution saying they were not going to vote. But had they voted, they would not approve the content. And then the other 9 colleges just wrote resolutions saying they refused to vote, right? And those resolutions were included with the Gen Ed packet. So in addition, not only were those resolutions included, the resolutions from last year of no confidence were also included. So, there had been a lot of discussion. This was part of the reason that a lot of colleges chose not to vote. There had been a lot of discussion at SFASACC about the fact that if there were going to be comments on governance or anything like that, those would be taken as protest votes and not real votes on the content of the Gen Ed, and they would not be regarded as valid, right? They wouldn't affect anything. So I have a feeling that those votes of no confidence were always going to be included so that it would be clear that I think it was taken to sort of say that these refusals to vote were just sort of political stances against the Students First itself. Okay, so it was moved ahead to SFASACC. At SFASACC, even though the work group didn't want to modify it because their group was no longer representative, SFASACC, the members, only 14 of them, there are 41 members currently, only 14 of them are actually full-time faculty at the moment. The rest are whether administrative but it was only 14. They decided to remove the diversity requirement that was included in the proposal that was passed along to them because there were there are no courses vetted for a diversity requirement. No courses have been identified. And when some people pushed back saying that they needed, it was universally recognized that this was a desirable thing, the claim was that this thing needs to get done by December. So since we don't have any courses that meet the diversity requirement, we're just going to move ahead and with a strong recommendation that it be re-added. When the question was asked, well, who would add it? Like, who are we recommending this to? Since there is no curriculum committee, there was no answer to be given. That was moved ahead to CCIC, and CCIC added the diversity requirement back in with the instruction to create a diversity committee as soon as possible and identify those courses. So that was the process. And I think one of the things you have to note is that the final form of that proposal was not determined by the group that was representative, the faculty group that had been formed for Gen Ed. So yesterday I was suggesting that since we have time before we figure out which courses are diversity, we figure out which, what the outcomes are going to be. And we also have time while we wait for special accreditation, the outside accreditors. They still have to get back to us to tell us if any of our programs are in jeopardy because of this shift. We don't have that information yet. So we may lose programs and we don't yet know which ones those are. Even though the responses we got from the BOR in January to our questions in December assured us that nothing would be lost. We don't actually have the information available to assure that. So I suggested that maybe we wait a while and get the situation under control, especially since we're going to have to rely on faculty to participate in this thing, and approve is evidence of precisely the lack of governance that faculty have been pushing back about. If you look at the resolutions that were attached, almost everywhere has something about governance in it. So, it would have been just a gesture to pause for a moment and reach out, try to establish something, because no work can be done with, the way it was put in the comments is that this thing is approved before it is complete. And I think that's true. It still has yet to be completed. So that was, and it was met just like conversation in ASA with sort of silence and no real response, and moved on. I don't know, those of you who are not on the 4Cs or AFT mailing list, there's a very strongly worded email went out earlier in the week, because one of the solutions that SAC had was that they thought they would give out honoraria and really generous course releases to get this curricular work done by December. Again, they want the work done by December, but the outcomes will be complete until next spring. Okay, at the end of next spring, about a year from now. So that makes no sense. And I was worried that the system would pay a lot of money to get programs aligned and then have to redo it all next year. And I was arguing against that at the academic affairs meeting. But by yesterday, it was clear that unions are saying faculty won't even take the money. So I think it's going to be a real obstacle to how this work gets done. But there was no conversation or response as to how to get around that hurdle. Just the insistence that this needed to be done in time for the update. So yes, that's the Gen Ed situation.
I guess everybody is pretty familiar with it amongst the folks in the community colleges.
David, I was on both the Gen Ed work group committee, and I was also this is Ron, and I was also on with Kalina on the consolidation committee, the ASA or SF ASA committee, and repeatedly for 2 years I told them that the way you build a Gen Ed is starting with outcomes, with learning outcome. That's the way in which we did it for TAP. That's the way in which, the state universities all did their gen eds back in 2010 or 11 or 12 or whenever. I mean, it took several years, obviously. And they kept ignoring me and saying that, no, we don't have time for that. And then at the end of the process, they said, well, I said, you still don't have outcomes. This doesn't meet the NETCHI requirements for a gen ed. And they said, well, we're going to have FERC, the TAP, we're just going to take those outcomes on here, and then we're going to have them revise them. And the idea that they've vetted courses for, first of all, I think it's funny that they think that the diversity courses haven't been vetted. No courses have been vetted for any of these. If you look at this document, okay, the only thing that's been vetted are disciplinary areas. There are no courses. The way in which you do assessment is you match up the course level learning outcomes with the gen ed learning outcomes. Otherwise, you have no idea where to collect student work from to take a look to see how they're doing. They haven't done any of that work, so there are no courses. There's no way to even vet courses for this. And so it's not just the diversity requirement that doesn't have courses. There aren't any courses throughout this entire core. There's no core here. All these are categories. And so it's not actually gen ed from the perspective of accreditation. So the fact that they're voting for it and the fact that they're arguing over diversity is ridiculous, because they should be arguing over all of these categories, because none of them have courses vetted for them.
Let me just
Are
note
you saying as well that in the TAP itself, they have not been vetted?
no.
The TAP, every single college has vetted their own courses for the TAP.
Okay.
Not only that, but every college has have a lot of differences in terms of number of credits, descriptions of courses, requirements of courses, prerequisites of courses. None of the courses have even been aligned.
Yeah. And I just want to point out a couple of ironies. One, Guided Pathways is one of the most advertised aspects of this thing. Guided Pathways talks very extensively about the importance of building from the ground up on outcomes, right? So you can advise students all you want. They're going to spend $3 million in the next year hiring advisors. If you have nothing to advise them about, if the content is absent, what the heck is the point? The other irony is that at SFASACC, the person to whom they will refer you if you need information about assessment is Ron. So
Well, that's sort of true. They tried to create a work group for assessment, even though we already had a system-wide assessment council that I chaired along with Jerry Wilcox from Western. But they tried to form this committee, this group, so that they could say they had another work group for the consolidation efforts. And I said to them, I will for Brian Donahue and I said from Quinnebog said we'll form this work group if you allow us to review all of the learning outcomes for all of the aligned programs and courses and gen ed. And they said no, thank you, we're good. So I said, well, then there's really no reason to form a work group on assessment. And so I do nominally chair an assessment council for the system, but we have never met because all of the oxygen has been put into this stuff and they're ignoring assessment. So I don't see any point to us meeting.
Isn't NETCHI interested in assessment? Whether our programs
Absolutely. In fact, our 5-year interim report, NETCHI experimented with 20% of the report being on assessment, and I wrote it was a 20-page report. Okay, 20% of it had to be on assessment, and I wrote that for our 5-year interim. And so NETCHI is very, very, very interested in assessment, and that's another reason why I suspect they're not going to be happy with what the system office has produced. Now, again, the question for me is, come July, are politics going to trump NETCHI's integrity? Because if they give in to the plan that's being presented in June, NETCHI will have lost all integrity. And at that point, assessment doesn't matter.
our jobs here at the colleges. We know we can just send them anything.
That's right.
I have a question. This is Jen Long. If the faculty don't participate, will they just have like Ken Kluchnik do all the work, or like what's the process? Is that what we don't know? Because I
This
don't
is
know.
Fran Cohn. What I fear is they will always be able to find a few faculty members to cooperate or to get to do this work. And those people will serve as, I will say it, the useful idiots that will get the work done. So I fear there will always be some who will, for whatever reason, do the work. And they only need a few.
Provost Gates had, you know, she makes it clear that nothing about NETCHI standards requires that the people who do the work are in any way elected in any specific way. And yesterday, when this was presented to the board, you know, the chair of the Academic Student Affairs Subcommittee of the BOR actually referenced NETCHI Standard 315. That was part of her introduction to this. Despite what we said about, you know, the group being decimated by, you know, people being pulled off, despite the fact that the final content was manipulated by 2 non-faculty groups. So there's creativity in this faculty's ultimate responsibility for the curriculum. I know that that's why there was a plan to chuck money at it, right? So lots of you're going to pay people quite well to do this work over the summer. But I think with all of this, with everything happening in terms of going back and distance learning and all of that stuff, I don't think that's going to be as attractive as it might have been. And the unions are so strongly against us taking that money. I mean, the way it was communicated is that's a bribe, right? That, you know, our stance, it's a bribe. And it very much is. So I think it's a matter of whether faculty are willing or unwilling to step on each other's toes, and we'll see how that goes.
Okay, is there any further discussion on this?
Can I just say to Lois that yes, I agree with Fran that they're going to always find a few faculty, but the issue is going to be, there's going to be a few faculty, and the fact that they rammed through this gen ed when there were only 2 colleges who voted for it, and they were 2 small colleges, and if they continue to ram through the curriculum like this, that's going to be a concern. I don't care how they interpret NETCHI standards. The standards are there. And when Merle Harris quoted standard 3.15 yesterday, I almost fell off my chair. That she did so with a straight face. Because that's going to be an issue that we have to hammer home. They're approving this with 5 or 6 people agreeing to it.
This is the problem of having interim structures which are not representative or legitimate. And of course, that came out in 9 of the, or even 10 of the community college resolutions.
Also, David, based on that org chart, there's not going to be anybody at the local level to prevent faculty from doing anything that they want. I mean, you know, I think that's one of the reasons why they want the professional advisors, the 250 to 1, because I don't think they trust faculty to tell students to take their program. You know, I mean, if it's not our program, why would we advise students to do it? And so I think implementation without, I mean, you know, the faculty make up the vast majority of workers on any campus. How are you going to implement something without any supervision of at our institution, over 300 people? Because they don't have any, they have a CEO. I mean, a CEO's job is to go out and fundraise. That's a CEO's job. It's not to you know, sort of supervise the way in which curriculum is implemented or students are advised or any of this other stuff. If they're going to try to do that from Hartford, when faculty have said repeatedly that they don't support any of this stuff, good luck to them. I'm not sure how it happens. I've had faculty tell me that I don't care what the system office comes up with. I don't even care if Netchi approves it or anybody approves it. When I walk into my classroom, I do whatever I want. This is very scary. But as someone who's been involved in assessment and quality assurance, and I was the associate dean of institutional effectiveness. Somebody in that, from that background, this is terrifying to me, because I do think there should be quality control, and I don't see it in their plan anywhere.
Be quality control, but much more important is faculty buy-in, and there's no faculty buy-in. So there's going to be an informal system, and there's going to be the system office. I agree. It's going to be a disaster.
Right. And Robin, I think my point is that without faculty support, okay, there is no quality control, because we are the quality control.
Way back long time ago, when I started in academia, people used to say really quaint things like, the faculty are the university. Yeah. Do you remember that? It's a long time ago.
It was like that for 1,000 years in the Western world, but
Yeah,
it's the 21st century.
Our president likes to say the administration comes and goes, but the students and faculty are eternal.
Well, the students should not be eternal. They should graduate at some point.
Yeah, that's true. No, that's true. I mean, as a body rather than individuals.
Prospective students.
Yes.
Of course, they should graduate with a skill set that allows them to succeed in their 4-year school or to succeed in the workforce. But that's going to be the test of this. And that could be 5 or 10 years down the road, when we're turning out people who are illiterate. And then somebody in Hartford finally realizes, holy cow, we've got a problem on our hands. Sad.
Well, they're talking about, is it 60,000 or 80,000 total students who would be in the one big community college?
Oh, Jakian keeps saying 80,000, which is nonsense.
I think it's about
Fair
50.
number.
Wow.
That's a blown up number.
As a result of this great advice. So that's why.
I see.
Just
So that's their expected number.
Yeah, that'll pay for.
Right. Well, I've seen spreadsheets like that before. Okay. The college system organization chart, item 8 on our agenda, we've already looked at, and I see that Lois has sent us all a copy. Thank you. Yeah, it's a pretty amazing document. Nicely colored. I'm sure they had an outside consultant help them on this.
Yes, I'm sure.
I
bet the Aspen Institute must have done that.
Did you show?
Maybe NCHEMS did it.
Did you show a screenshot of the organizational chart?
I'll bring that. Yes, we did, but I'll bring it back up now.
Thank you.
It'll just take me 1 second here.
I've actually been looking at the org chart, and I do have a question. It's probably more of a union question, but something that this is Paul from Capital, sorry. Something that I and others I know have expressed concerns about. As we all know, as we're faculty, we're protected by union bargaining units. As I'm looking at this org chart, and it is under Francis Navarra, there's the Dean of Health Careers, then there's
3 pages down. I'll try and make it bigger. I'm here. All right, there's Francine Navarra. Right, then there's a bunch of deans here.
Associate deans of allied health, exercise science, medical, lab, physical therapy, paramedic, radiology, respiratory, vet tech, etc. So
there's associate deans all over the place. There's an associate dean for railroads.
Like I said, I don't even know if they know the answer to this yet, but the concern
All right, we're losing you.
I've expressed, I don't want to be a dean, but if I become a dean, does that take me out of my collective bargaining union and put me into management? That would be a
Yes, it does.
concern. Yeah,
It does.
yeah.
Yes. Community college deans are considered management. Anything below a dean, the associate deans are also management. Anything below the dean level, they're union. But anything a dean and above are management.
Yeah, that was my question. And like I said, my concern that I've voiced all along, because
Oh, it keeps going, this chart. There's more
yeah,
associated.
it goes on forever. And, you know, I'm just reminded, like my comments earlier, this is all prefaced on the fact that it's going to save money. And there are so many boxes on this org chart. I can't even understand it. But the one thing, you know, from a purely personal perspective, is that those of us who are coordinators and have always had union protection are now out in the wind.
Well, the program coordinators are here in pink. Full-time faculty, discipline leads, program coordinators.
Yeah, but I'm looking on page 3
We're
of the
here.
org chart where it says, sorry, I have to call it back up here again.
I have it on screen.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
David, did you email this to us?
Lois did.
I
Lois did.
emailed it.
Thank you, Lois.
Yeah, on screen there, if you look the second column from the left where it says Dean of Health Careers, then Associate Dean of Nursing, then Faculty. Then you look down in the third blue box on that second column from the left where it says Associate Dean, Allied Health, Exercise Science, etc. So unless I'm reading that wrong, where there's an associate dean who is over coordinators, the way I'm reading that is there's the associate dean of allied health, the associate dean of exercise science, the associate dean of radiology, and then underneath there's the full-time faculty and program coordinators. So maybe that's just confusing the way it's written, but the way I'm seeing it is that the coordinator becomes associate dean, but I don't know.
No, I think that's wrong. I think it must be that this is an associate dean in charge of all those things from allied health
Okay,
through to vet
that
tech.
could be, that would make more sense then. Okay.
More sense. Otherwise, we've really
Right,
caught with a multiplication of associate deans, that's for sure.
Yeah. Okay, that would make more sense then. Thank you.
That's the model that we have at Naugatuck Valley. Is that we only have four academic divisions, and each division is led by an associate dean. And then we have chairs and coordinators who are faculty under that. So it's the same model, except for the fact that the associate dean, who's the leader of that academic division, is, you know, at the same location as the faculty, whereas in this model, they are remote, it looks like.
Right. Yeah, they'd be at the system office because that person would be there'd be the dean of health careers, would be responsible for the associate dean of allied health, and that's all. But in some cases, the dean has, and there's an associate dean for nursing. There's no chairs in this thing. You have full-time faculty, discipline needs, program discipline leads.
Right, there's no chairs, right? There's discipline leads, though, whatever that means. That's not even in the contract.
Well, okay. So we can certainly go through this, and I can tell you that Steve Adair will be going through this as well. It is a very
Does this look
impressive.
only slightly top-heavy to you?
What's that?
Does this look just slightly top-heavy to you?
But just logistically, where on earth are they going to house all of these deans? They'll have to buy another office building or lease one in Hartford. Where are they going to put all these people?
I've already heard that rumor that they are going after another building.
They'd have to. And somebody already mentioned they're going to have staff to help them. We know that. So the cost is astronomical.
And I find it interesting that the universities and charter oak college presidents are put at the system office in orange.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That's interesting too. I will bring that to the attention of my president. So, okay, we have the charts. We can go through this and we'll figure out how many of each category they're planning to build into this. And we only got to page 3. I mean, the joy of this is it goes on for a long, long time.
15 pages.
15 pages. All right. So we've done a better presentation of their organization chart than they did.
Because
Then
we
that
know
was-
what we're doing.
That's a very low bar, Dave.
Well,
But we know what we're doing, actually.
we do. All righty. So we're coming towards the end of the agenda here, if I can find it. Procedure and policy for reviewing system documents. Barbara brought this up, and that was that the enrollment work group had passed us on their document, which was not very good because it didn't mention any of the steps which the BOR and the system office would actually take to help students register, including allowing them to register with up to $1,200 in money owed and so forth. And so we made some suggestions to improve it. Kalina and I did. Now, Barbara had a question, and I think wants to make a point about the procedure for us to review a document sent to us by the system office. Barbara, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, good. I wasn't concerned about us reviewing things. I think it's fine for any of us to review things and make suggestions. It's just that when the name of the Faculty Advisory Committee appears as this was reviewed, there was a system-wide mailing that said this was reviewed by the Faculty Advisory Committee, but it was not anything we had approved. So it doesn't make any sense for us we need to object and warn people that they're not to do that. They can't use our name unless we have actually approved something.
Approved or endorsed. Approved or endorsed.
Can I just jump in here a second and just go back? My apologies. I'm looking at this org chart and I can't help but say something for a minute. First of all, on page 3 that we were looking at, where is my dean in this? So if I'm a coordinator and I have faculty under me, now according to page 3, I have to report to the associate dean over allied health, who reports to the dean of health careers, who reports to a system office person. Where is any internal control of where I would go to what is currently now a chair or a dean? Is that now completely out of the org chart? And the second thing I would say, and we've all made comments about how top heavy this is and how this has grown so much more than I ever expected. I just want to tell a very quick story here. My apologies. Years ago, when Mark Herzog was the chancellor, and we agree or disagree with Mark in different areas, but I was in Vermont one time with my wife, and Mark was with somebody, and we were in the same restaurant, and we were a couple of tables apart from each other, but I knew him and he knew me. I had seen him at a couple of committees I'd served on. So I said, well, I'm going to go say hi to him. So I got up and went over and I started to introduce myself and say, hi, I'm Paul. And he said, oh, hi, Paul. How are you? Nice to see you. Now, I hadn't met him that many times. And, but the fact that he knew me and knew where I was from, House Capital, the only reason I bring that up is because that will never happen again. There are so many levels between the faculty member and at that point, the chancellor of the system who knew my name. He didn't have any reason to know my name or where I'm from, but I'd met him a couple times at committees. And for me, and and I was talking about the individualism of the college. I know Francis and many others have talked about that uniqueness and the fact that we know people throughout the system. As I look at this org chart, what is really most frustrating for me is the fact that this is so large and so big that examples like that, where you go up and the chancellor says, oh, hi, Paul, that will never happen again.
That gives you an overview of the page 3. You would be somewhere here, Paul. I don't know where. Somewhere down here. No, you'd be somewhere down here.
Somewhere way down there. One of my colleagues at Capitol was looking at, how much separation there was before all this began between a faculty member and what was, the chancellor long ago in a land far, far away. And if I remember right, there were 6 or 7 different levels that you would have to get through. Then last I heard, he came up with 11 different, so they've added 4 levels. As I look at this, I can't even count the number of levels that they've now added on this chart, all in an effort to save money and, keep the students interested. So if a student really needs to get a hold of somebody, they have to go through 15 levels now to try to get an answer from someone?
It will be interesting when there are complaints. Okay, so we're going to go and analyze this, and I'm sure Steve Adair and Lois Amy and myself and others will spend some time now looking through all these charts, as can everybody else. Quite the impressive. There's some very small ones. Oh, here's another big one. I can't even tell what this is. That's the Vice President for Student Support. And you have all the counselors. So we have one last item on or 2 last items on the agenda. So that's fine, Barbara. We will not allow the term reviewing unless we have actually approved by a vote or by some other form of consensus a particular document. We'll make that clear too. I apologize for any confusion that caused.
Approved or
had
approved.
the opportunity to fix it and did not. But do we want something in writing? I know that you had said you wanted to do that, Barbara.
Yeah, I was thinking of, well, I don't know that we've ever passed a group policy other than what we put in the bylaws. But if we had a policy in writing that we could give people, like when Terry Ramundi came, we could have, just given her politely, this piece of paper that said, we're happy to help, but you can't use our name unless we see the final draft and vote on it.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
It would be helpful because it would make it seem less oppositional to then asking after the fact to have our names removed.
Okay. Barbara,
Having to object after they use our name when they shouldn't.
Right.
Would you like to drop would you like to drop a quick policy statement for us for the next meeting?
I sent one out this morning. It's just short, but did anybody see it?
I saw the email.
Yeah,
Yeah, I see it. The faculty advisory. Do you want to read it?
Go ahead. I don't have it in front of me.
The Faculty Advisory Committee or any of its members may review drafts of documents from other groups to give informal advice. However, the name of the FAC should not be used due to such a review unless the final draft of the document has been endorsed or improved by a full vote of the FAC or a vote of the full FAC.
I make a motion to adopt that policy.
Okay, I'm looking for it to put it online. Is this the thing you sent at 8:04? Yes, okay, I've got it now. All right, here it is. And since it's an agenda item, it's fully in order to have a motion. And here is the motion. The Faculty Advisory Committee, FAC, or any of its members may review drafts of documents from other groups to give informal advice. However, the name of the FAC should not be used due to such a review unless the final draft of the document has been endorsed or approved by a vote of the full FAC. So Barbara, you've moved that. Is there a seconder?
Francone, I'll second that.
This is Robin. I think I moved.
Oh, Robin, you moved it? Okay. Lois, you have that for the minutes.
Yeah.
Is there any further discussion? If not, I'll call for a vote. Those in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. Are there any abstentions? Then that's unanimously approved. Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you.
I have a question in regard to the FAC vote on that, in general, not that specific resolution. I'm looking at the FAC legislation on the Board of Regents. And I know that the FAC, long before I came around, was doing good work in making recommendations and suggestions. And it says the FAC is charged with representing the perspectives of faculty and staff, et cetera, and provide yearly reports twice a year. It was created by the 2011 legislative session. So my question is, for those who've been on the committee longer or from a procedural perspective, is there any recourse under the statute? I haven't seen any that the FAC can pursue if all of its resolutions, concerns, suggestions, and comments have been disregarded.
I think the only thing is the implied recourse is we're also supposed to be advising the legislative committees of cognizance on higher education. So we could go to them. But they don't have direct authority over the BOR, only, you know, budgetary and statutory and all that.
It's a good question. I mean, we can ask, they have a lawyer there. We can ask that question of the lawyer. It'll put them on notice. I mean, the other recourse.
I'm simply asking because it is statutory, and I know we've said that many times. And anytime there's a statute, if there's a violation of that statute, there has to be some type of recourse. And just given what I've seen in my short history, anything that has been proposed has essentially been summarily dismissed. And so I'm just wondering, and I don't know the answer. That's why I'm asking. I just don't know if within the statute or some implication somewhere or another part of the BOR that I haven't seen where they discuss this issue, is there any type of recourse on the part of the FAC to say, hey, listen, you don't have to do what we say, but you certainly have to take these considerations more seriously and give us reasoning or whatever the case may be, instead of just continuing to pursue your agenda without any apparently requesting or seeking input from the FAC. Well, they're seeking it, but from my perspective, they're just disregarding it.
Yeah, well, I mean, the interesting thing, and Clint can comment on this as well, when we had a meeting sort of to introduce us to our responsibilities as members of the board, albeit non-voting ex officio, the attorney for the board basically told us that when there's a vote in the board, we're supposed to fall in line. We're supposed to support what the board did. And that didn't quite go over too well, but I think we just let it pass because it seemed that it was a ridiculous statement, especially as our role is one of to give them advice. Now, what happens when they don't take our advice? We also have recourse to journalists. We have recourse to whatever people we know in the legislature or in the executive. I think that's politically all that we have available to us.
Yeah, and actually we didn't completely let it pass. I looked for the document she cited and then asked her to send it to me, and she did. And what the point that she made actually is in there, right? It says that you are to offer your opinion, but sort of support any decision or course of action the board actually takes. So she spiked out 3 specific things in there. Another was that we should not embarrass the board, like we shouldn't be doing anything to ruin its reputation, and we should not be focusing on any one subgroup's interest, as opposed we should be focused on the entire system. Those are the ones she spiked out. If you look at all the other things in there, the other responsibilities, a lot of those responsibilities would require that we do advise and advise strongly, especially the ones where the board is responsible for preserving the public good and public interest and the integrity of the institutions that it governs. So if you look at just a few of the responsibilities in isolation, she might, it does sound as if we need to shut up. If you look at them all together, it requires that we speak up. So the other thing is that in December, we had the idea, actually, I think Steve Adair had the idea of presenting our comments to the board in the form of questions, and there were 11 questions, and they did respond to us in January with answers to those questions. Not exactly sure how the answers were sourced because I still don't know if they got an update. And some of those answers are actually false, or at least were offered confidently with no information available to back them up, but we got a response.
Okay, so we'll continue from there. I know I have an interview at 4:30 today. Someone from CT Post called me up. I think it was on recommendation from Lois, but I'm not sure. Who wants to do it?
Linda Lambert.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I'm gonna call her back at 4:30. Thank you. And I'll talk about, increasing the levels of bureaucracy, the amount of money likely being spent at a time when the corona pandemic is cutting into our resources.
Yeah, hammer on that one because I've already spoken to her on that one. And I would also, you might want to think about sending her the org charts as well.
Yes, the org charts. I'll talk about that now that we've seen it. Okay, last item on the agenda that I have is a personal problem more than a FAC problem, although it does highlight some of the difficulties we've been discussing. Before I became chair of the FAC, the president of my university, Dr. Toro, had proposed that I go onto a working group on online programs, which was being organized by Kevin Corcoran, who is now at the system office, but was previously the executive director of CTDLC, the Connecticut Distance Learning Consortium, that was housed in some kind of symbiotic association with Charter Oak College. I've attended their meetings, which are very typical of the kinds of problems that the folks at the community colleges have faced. First of all, the meetings are run by 4 consultants from Blackboard, which is the for-profit software company that provides the learning management system we use. Their contract is actually up for renewal. And at the same time, they are given, obviously, a consultant's contract to come and run this. They then proposed a number of actions. The basic one is that there be system-wide approved online courses, both at the community college level and at the university level, presumably approved by this working group, which they think would become a steering committee for an office of online programs, which presumably Kevin Corcoran would head. It's not representative. For example, of the universities, only Central is there. I am there, along with 2 deans, who were last year faculty members. And Western is there by 2 support staff who are involved with online learning. Southern is not present, and Eastern is not present. And then there are a number of people here and there from community colleges. I think that there are only 3 community college teaching faculty, and 4 community college administrative staff. So I did a resolution. I mean, I've trying to deal with this situation. You can see it here on screen, which I proposed to our university senate. And I said that this does not function according to principles of shared governance. And moreover, it is not representative of the various institutions making up either the community colleges or, for that matter, the universities. And further, it doesn't respect the statutory requirement to respect the distinct missions of community colleges and universities. For example, they include in the programs that they would want to support the EDD programs, the doctoral level programs at Central and at Southern, at the same time that they also want to look into certificate programs at the community college level. Obviously, there's different requirements, and these are very, very different programs. So I proposed a resolution in 3 parts to the CCSU Senate, and here it is, that there should be a separation between any support system-wide in any shape or form, and those at the community college level, because they are addressing different audiences and they have different requirements. I also indicate that no consultants from outside firms, especially those in the process of bidding for a CSU contract, should be included. They talked about having a separate marketing department. I mean, this is another empire being built at the system office, which in fact existed before at the level of the 4 campus CSUs. There was something called Online CSU from about 2006 to 2009, and it failed. It failed because the assumptions upon which it was based were erroneous. They thought that they could recruit 80% of the enrollment for online programs from outside the campuses or the universities of the CSU system. And in fact, 90% of the students were internal to the 4 universities, as might have been expected. So eventually that was canceled in 2009, and this is some kind of an effort to revive it, or perhaps the CTDLC, which was eliminated about 2 years ago, presumably because it not only did not make money, but was losing money. And so having a separate marketing was not a good idea. And the third point, which I'll just state briefly, was that anything affecting the universities, especially graduate level programs, should be done by some coordination between and among the universities. And that should be separate from anything which is being done with respect to certificate or associate level degrees at the community colleges. I'm sorry, somebody wanted to speak?
Yeah, this is Mike Shea. Can you hear me, David?
Yes.
Thanks. I just wanted to ask you if you wouldn't mind sending that to me and maybe to all 3 CSU people. I'd like to bring it up to my Senate.
Yes.
No matter what we do with it here, would you mind sending it to me and maybe just with that little a couple of sentences contextualizing that you said when you just first spoke?
Yes, I will. I'll do that this evening. So I have a meeting on Monday with these people. I presented it to the CCSU Senate. As you see, the vote there was 54-0 to 2. There were 2 abstentions. And this is an effort to maintain the distinct mission of the universities relative to the community colleges, and also for some form of representative and legitimate governance over anything involving support, never mind initiation, of online programs. For example, they had a discussion. The 4 Blackboard people had decided, based on information they got from the Office of Higher Education and a comparison between programs being offered in New England and New York State, that there was a low offering and high demand for nursing programs. So they were going to put nursing programs online. Well, you can imagine that even at that meeting, some of the community college and university people said, that's not right. And so at the next meeting, they simply came back and said, well, we're not going to do nursing, we'll do accounting. This is, arbitrary.
Can you repeat the voting outcomes?
This is a very mild resolution, by the way. This simply says, stop this particular committee and start one for the community colleges and one for the universities if you want to do this, but let the universities determine what they're going to do to support their graduate level programs, which are online. By the way, Mike, what's the programs online at Southern? Do you know?
Yeah, I think there's a couple, but there's one that's completely online, and I think it's the library science.
Yes, library science. Okay. So, but at any rate,
they can't hear me anymore.
I didn't hear before. But you'd be able to send that to me with that little context.
Yes.
Because I do want to bring it up to my Senate. Thanks.
I'll send it to you this evening. So I would like, and the resolution I put here is fairly mild, right? It simply says the way we're functioning is not the way to function. You can't do it with outside consultants running the meeting. You can't do it with marketing that doesn't take into account the people who actually know what they're doing. And you need to have it as representative for all of the community colleges for their programs and the universities for their programs. So I don't know, Mike, would you like to make this as a proposal? It's kind of
You mean for us here?
Yes.
Yes, I'll move that.
Okay. Is there a seconder?
I second.
Second.
Robin, second. Okay. Any further discussion?
Yes, this is Linda Wilder from Charter Oak. I sent you an email. There's a couple errors that you made when you referenced Charter Oak in that document,
Okay,
including about me.
What are they? Sorry.
Well, one, you call Charter Oak community college,
Oh, no.
and then you reference me as somebody in charge of online learning. So I sent you those corrections.
Okay, I'm sorry. I must have. I will make that
So if
correct.
you could- All right, thanks.
By the way, what did you make of these?
I actually am thinking some of those same things. The thing that I've wondered is whether there was whether there was something available where we were able to get this consultant work rather than us paying for it. I'm wondering if there was something where Blackboard owed us some consultant work or offered us some, and that's why this was done. But that's just pure speculation on my part. But the whole process does seem odd to me because, like you said, it's being run by the consultants, which is why, while I'm on the committee, you see I've not really participated that much. I do. In terms of the concept, I support that. I think that there's something to be said for trying to gain best practices. And I mean, that's the way Kevin presented it to me, is that what we're really looking at is what are some best practices in online learning across the system and how can we share that with each other. But when it comes down to then creating programs at the system level, that seems odd. But I'm not sure if that's what this will really end up being, or if it's individual schools creating their own programs, but getting some support now at the system level to get those up and running. It's been an odd process. I agree.
Yes, and there was one of the people from the community colleges, I think it was Jill, who said they would appreciate some support from the system office for some of the programs that they have, and that could well be the case. But it can't be done the way it's being done now, run by outside consultants and not on a representative basis.
Correct. I think the support would be much appreciated, but it's an odd way that we're going about it.
Right, and I would
Which is why I wondered if Blackboard just owed this to us or something,
I don't think so. But you know what? We can find out. I will ask that on Monday at the next meeting that we have. Okay, any other further comments? Can we proceed to a vote in that case? Those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed?
Aye.
Oh, that's the ayes. Those opposed? Okay, that's approved, and I'll get back to everybody. There's some echo that's happening now. Let me just do something here to stop it. So I'll get back to everybody with further information on this. But now I know how you folks at the community colleges feel about being on these committees. And by the way, David Stoloff, I don't know if he's still on. I think he may have had to leave. He's been on these committees with me before, the old CSU system, and they were no fun there. You can only imagine what it's like at this much larger and much more confusing and not representative kind of group. I mean, I really think I should probably resign from it.
Hey, David, this is Mike Shea. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Before we adjourn, I just wanted to ask if we want to, for next meeting, plan to have a statement of principles on reopening or something that addresses some of the concerns Barbara had, that different people have about how they're about it. Just some sort of statement of principles that need to be followed. I wonder if we could put that on the agenda for, we have a June meeting, I presume, right?
Yes, we do. I'm just looking for the date now. I agree. Would you like to begin to draft something?
Yeah, I could do that.
Thank you.
Oops.
Yeah, we will definitely put that on the agenda for the next meeting.
Because I think the sooner we get a vote on that and get it out, the better, because, they're going to be making decisions, and I think it would, that they at least, we don't want to necessarily determine the decisions, but I think we should talk about the context or the principles behind that have to be met behind the decisions. And
Right.
I think
Our
we need to
next meeting
get that out
is on
soon.
June the 12th.
The 12th?
June the 12th. And the interesting thing is, this time we meet a week before the Board of Regents. So any resolution that we make then, which I think will be before any final decision has been made, I don't think they're going to be able to make a decision until towards the end of June. That would actually have an impact.
Yeah, and we might, and I would also hope that even though it's summertime, we could get it out to the senates of the various of the 17 campuses, governing bodies, so that they can weigh in on it as well. It's including, I couldn't hear this morning Patty O'Neill at all, but certainly the unions should be making some sort of statement about principles of safety and educational and other such things. I couldn't hear what she said. Are they on the track to sort of make sure there's some oversight of these, or some demands or whatever about these changes?
One of the points she made was that she wanted the union contracts to be respected in terms of workload and compensation. But there are other issues which go beyond that.
Yeah, I think I'm more concerned about new issues that, in a sense, the contract doesn't necessarily account for, like protecting people's safety and giving people the right to, conduct the classes the way they want based on safety, not just educational principles. And technically, I don't think that's in the contract.
No, it's not.
So I think that's why I'm hoping the union will step forth with statements like the kind we might make next meeting.
Well, why don't you go ahead? Is there anybody else who's interested in working on that? Mike, why don't you go ahead, draft something up and send it to Kalina and me? And then
I will.
The three of us can work on that.
Okay.
And as long as we're talking about the next meeting, I think we're due for our annual or semester report. And since we meet right before, a week before the meeting, that would be a good time to finalize it. I think as vice chair, I'm responsible for presenting it, so I'm going to start writing it. So if anybody, if there are things that need to be addressed and you want to make sure they're addressed, you want to send an email, please let me know.
Excellent. Okay, are there any other further matters?
Can I mention a couple things?
Yes, go ahead.
I felt like I should. Just be aware that in the ASA committee at the BOR,
Wait a second, I'm going to mute everybody again. I can find my cursor. Okay, go ahead.
there are new guidelines for starting BOR approved programs. That's on page 73 of yesterday's agenda. And that came from sort of a little bit of alarm about approving new programs when we're so uncertain of our financial future. So that exists now, and a lot of the new programs that are going through are getting a sort of 7-semester trial period added to, that's added to the resolution. We'll come back to the BOR to make sure that it's met its goals in terms of financial whatever within 7 semesters. And just the incomplete policy has changed. I'm sure we all already know that. That's on 102 of the agenda, but I just thought I should let people know.
Yes, I mean, they're being careful about creating new programs, but not about creating new positions.
It was striking at that ASA meeting. They were so careful about every single program that went through, but not at all careful. Because I tried to focus my argument on the financial impact of paying people to do work that has to be redone, and it didn't quite catch.
Okay, is there any other business?
David, I just wanted to make a comment. I was going in between, this is Myrna. I was going in between my mail, my email, and this meeting. And I just noticed that meeting that we had so many technical difficulties was, well, came to fruition because I have a YouTube video where is David Levinson the chair of that? It says, watch the Connecticut State Community College Academic Affairs Organization webinar on YouTube. Is that the one that was supposed to transpire at 2:30?
Yes. Can you
Okay,
guys
so
hear
if you
me?
go to your emails, you will see that that meeting was held.
It was, they pre-recorded that. That was pre-recorded, and then they just, since the meeting didn't work out, they just put it out there.
Okay.
I am David Levinson. I want to
Okay.
thank the Board of Regents and Marco J.
But that's interesting.
Okay, but that's something for homework for tonight.
Yeah, just so that you can watch that, because I know a lot of us were looking to see if we can see what was going to go on.
Right, and there'll be a quiz on the organization chart at the next meeting. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Can you hear me, David?
Yes.
I had a question that I put in the chat a little bit ago. So this is Christine from Middlesex. Someone on my campus asked if we were out of compliance with access being restricted to our meetings. They asked about public attendance at our meetings, if these are supposed to be open meetings.
The answer is yes.
I sent it to the group responding to that with the link to where it's publicly posted 24 hours ahead of time, etc. Because we are subject
No,
to.
but she was talking about public attendance, not our minutes being posted. Like being able
public
to
attendance.
attend this meeting.
Yes, public can
link to
attend.
this meeting is on
And
the
in
agenda.
what is posted in
Oh,
our
okay.
agenda is the phone number to call.
Kalina, thank you for clarifying that.
It's available after.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that clarification.
Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I won't even call for abstentions. We're adjourned until June the 12th. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, David.
Nice weekend.
We'll go through the meeting with all the technical snafus as such. Bye now.
You're welcome.
Thank you.